He is founder of Tunnel to Towers, which has helped tens of thousands of veterans and first responders across the country. His personal story of loss, family, and purpose is one you have to hear. Frank Siller is my guest on this Arroyo Grande. Come on. I'm Raymond Arroyo. Welcome to Arroyo Grande. Go subscribe to the show now. Turn the notifications on. Do that. I don't want you to miss anything that's coming. We're about to celebrate Memorial Day here in the United States, and when you think of honoring the sacrifice of our fighting men and women and first responders, Tunnel to Towers instantly comes to mind. Frank Siller founded the organization back in 2001, and though you may have seen the commercials, the personal loss that drove him, the love, and the purpose he's found is something you have to hear. I'm honored to be joined by Frank Siller. Frank, thanks for being here. You are one of 7 kids. Tell me how close you were to your younger brother, Stephen. When your parents died, he was a child. He was like 10 years old.
Yes. When Stephen was born, my father was 49, my mother was 44. So he was our little miracle. And we were much older. His older siblings were much older. My brother Russ was 24 years older than him, and I was closest in age. And I was in the 8th grade. I was already 14 years old. So you could see the big difference in age. So So my father died when he was 8 and a half, and a year and a half later, our mom died. So at 10 years old, he was orphaned, and we all played a major role in his upbringing. Not only being brothers or sisters, but being parent figures in his life, and primarily lived with my oldest brother Russ in Rockville Center with his wife Jacqueline, and it was a crushing time in our lives for sure. But we focused everything on Stephen, and he grew up to be an outrageous human being, to say the least.
Yeah, well, I love that you gathered around Stephen when he was younger and orphaned, in your parents' death, and how the whole family surrounded him even in his passing, which we'll get to in a moment. Tell me about your parents, though. I was fascinated by your parents, George and May. And they're a big part, not only of Stephen's service, but yours. Tell me about how their faith and philosophy colored Stephen's career.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because they are the reason why Stephen did what he did about serving, making the ultimate sacrifice. And all my siblings know about doing and giving, because that's the way we were brought up. We were very poor, so it wasn't much to give, growing up. But they did when they could. But my parents were part of the Third Order, Franciscan Third Order. And, I would see my father often being going out and visiting the sick, or going to hospitals and reading and praying with them, and doing all those things. And our family, centered around our spirituality and our Christian beliefs. It was shown to us in a very early age that the best way to live your life is by serving others, and that was most certainly what Stephen made the ultimate service.
Well, and people know Third Order Franciscans, they follow obviously the charism of Saint Francis of Assisi, and it's one that goes out and gives to people and gives all you can. How did that, do you think, draw Stephen to this public service of being a firefighter?
Well, my father led by example, and so did my mother. My father, went to mass almost every day of his life, and although he had to go because he was an outrageous human being, he might have reacted a little over the top on some things, and then quickly had to go and beg for forgiveness. He was quite a character, but he kept the 4 boys in line. I can tell you that.
Wow.
And my sisters, they didn't need anything. They were all saintly to begin with, and still are. So it was great. My mother was never raised a voice, didn't have to. She would just, in a very holy way, just live a life that was just, so special. I can't even explain to you how fortunate we were to have the parents we had, growing up. And we, like I said, we were very poor. We were the families that sometimes people left stuff at Thanksgiving or at different times, on our doorstep, many times for us. But we didn't know, we didn't know if we didn't have what we didn't have, because what we did have, which was the love of family, was more than we ever could possibly want. Plus, having a million kids in the neighborhood.
Frank, a couple of times now you said that Stephen was an outrageous personality. What does that mean?
Well, Stephen was, you think of a young boy losing both parents at such an early age, right?
Yeah.
So he was hyper to begin with as a young kid. He used to drive my father nuts, I mean, hopping all over the place. But then again, my father was already older, so he had probably less patience at that time. But, Stephen went through a rough adolescence. He really did. He had to come to grips with what happened to him. And, I remember one day where I was out with Stephen in Rockville Center spending a day with him, and he questioned his very being. He said, "Frankie, why did mommy and daddy have to die? I wish I was never born." And I said, "Stephen, oh my God, don't say that. This is right after my parents have both passed away. And that my parents love you so much. They brought you into this world. And, the brothers and sisters, we will always be there for you." And we were always there for him.
Yeah.
And I said, "God put you on this earth for a reason. Someday you will do something very special." Little did I know what that special was, by any means. So Stephen gave us a run for the money as an adolescent, but he landed on his feet at a very young age, 19 years old. Done. The nonsense was completely over. He came back to Staten Island, where he grew up with us as he was a little kid before he went out with my brother Russ. Got reintroduced to the little girl around the block where they used to walk to school with when he was a little kid. Fell in love, got married, had 5 kids, had 5 children. Always wanted to be a firefighter. Always wanted, we had uncles and police officers, firefighters, cousins that were firefighters.
Yeah.
Always wanted to be a firefighter, and became a firefighter at age 27. And he died when he was 34. So
and he's eventually assigned to Brooklyn Squad 1, which is a fire brigade. I know he was in several, but that was where he was in 2001. You had lunch with him, Frank, on September 10th, 2001. He said what to you that day?
We were making plans because we're going to play golf the next day, and we were talking about. He also worked with me in another business because firefighters had to work 2 jobs,
Right.
And we were making plans for the next season, and he said, my parting words is, "See you tomorrow, brother. I love you." And we hugged each other, and we thought that the next day playing golf, the 4 brothers were going to play golf. Russ, George, Stephen, and myself, we were just so looking forward to it. And, he was just finished his night tour in Squad 1 in Brooklyn. He was on his way home to play the golf, and he heard on his radio scanner what happened. So, what do these guys do? Raymond, what do these great heroes do?
Yeah.
He went back to his firehouse, got his gear, drove to the mouth of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, was closed for security reasons, strapped the 60 pounds of gear on his back, and calmly ran into that tunnel. And I know it was calmly because somebody saw him come to a screeching halt in his truck, but saw him put his gear on and jog into the tunnel, came out the other side, up West Street, and while saving people in the towers, he gave up his life.
Why do you think he ran through the Brooklyn Tunnel that day? What did he tell his wife? He tells his wife, Sally. He calls her, right?
He calls her while he's going back to get his gear, back to the firehouse, and he says, "Tell my brothers I'll try to catch up with them later." Yeah, and obviously, when the second plane hit, we know there was no catching up. There was no golf that day. That's for damn sure. He just did what first responders do, what firefighters do, what police officers do, what our men and women in uniform that protect our country do. They go right towards the danger. They put their life on risk. They put everything else on the side, and they do what duty calls them to do. And, when we found out that he ran through that tunnel and he was going up those stairs, and he gave up his life. When I first realized he wasn't coming home, I couldn't believe it. I said, I was so angry. I said, those 5 kids are gonna be, they're not gonna know Stephen like he this perfect person, not perfect in every way, but like a beautiful person. And these poor kids are not going to know their father the way they should have known their father. They're going to hear through stories, and we tell them every time I'm with them. I tell them, and they're all new stories because he left us plenty. But he was an outrageous human being, and just how he lived, and most certainly how he died. Giving up his life.
Frank, you said something there that jumped out at me, and having known you and some of your brothers for a number of years now, you said he told his wife, Stephen did, tell my brothers I'll catch up with them. And it seems to me you all have spent these last few years trying to catch up to him.
Yeah. When we heard what he did, we knew we had to do something. And I remember talking to my sister-in-law, and I asked her, is it okay if we start a foundation to make sure that, Stephen's legacy, that like people know what he did, and that the kids know that their dad's a hero, and we'll make sure people don't forget. And she said, okay, she gave it a blessing. And then I told my siblings what we were going to do. And we were apprehensive. And as, we never, we never ran a foundation, but, it was just so simple. What we were trying to do is to honor the sacrifice and never forget. And we wanted to do good. St. Francis of Assisi, back to our roots. Yeah. So brothers and sisters, while you have time, let us do good. So while we're here, we wanted to do good and to remember what Stephen did, but not just Stephen. And I think one of the greatest things about the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is that we realized early on, Stephen's symbolic of so many people that did so many beautiful, courageous things that day, so many heroes that day, that we made sure that the very first run that we had through the tunnel that retraces Stephen's final heroic footsteps, we had the banners there for American flags there for every first responder who died that day. Because it wasn't just about Stephen. And I think now that there's thousands of families come, we have 40,000 people come every year that do the run. They come out the tunnel and they see their story, their loved one, hold a picture of their loved one, and the 7,000 men and women who gave their lives in the global war on terror. We have the names and pictures, every single one of them. It's a mile long, shoulder by shoulder, held by all these other great heroes. And so we remember everything. But the foundation from the beginning is, we wanted to honor his sacrifice, and we wanted to make sure we never forget the sacrifice of him and so many that day and so many since.
I love that this started as a 5K race, as you said, retracing your brother's steps through the Brooklyn Tunnel out to where the towers were, the site of the towers. But it's transformed into something so much bigger than that now, Frank. When did it take a turn and leave a 5K commemorative race and turn into this foundation that now cares for all of these first responders and our wounded and fallen heroes?
Well, there's been many miracles that have happened to us at the foundation and to my siblings and myself. And a lot of times God puts us on a path. And by the way, when we told people that we were going to have a run through the tunnel, the old laugh said, you're not going to get that done. They're not going to close parts of Brooklyn. They're not going to close a tunnel. They're not going to close downtown Manhattan, for you. And as God is my judge, the first meeting I had with this guy, Bob Adamenko from the Department of Transportation, in 10 minutes, not only when I told him my brother Stephen's story, as a kid being orphaned and growing up, getting married and all this stuff, he was crying. He came around, he said, we're going to get this done. He calls a guy up, Gideon Davis, and says, can we close the tunnel in late September? And the guy says, yes. And then he calls another person and says, will you help them organize this run? And as somebody I went to high school with, my brother Russ, the older brother Russ taught, a retired lieutenant. Gosh. So there's been miracles, but listen, the first ever quadruple amputee to ever survive any war was from Staten Island, where we all were born, all the Sillers. And Sergeant Brendan Morocco. When I heard about it, I went down to visit him with a group of people from the foundation. And while I was talking to him, his father asked me, actually, can you talk to Brendan and speak to him and give him some words of encouragement? And while I was talking to him, first of all, I said, oh, what am I going to say to him? But I did. But while I was talking to him, I said, Brendan, can the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, can we build you a home, a mortgage-free home? And Brendan said, Frank, I don't know where I'm going to live. I said, I don't care. I don't care where you want to live. We'll build it wherever you want. And he goes, I might want to stay in the D.C. area because of all the operations, by Walter Reed. And I said, wherever you want. And he goes, wherever I want. And of course, he didn't hold up a finger because he didn't have arms, but he went wherever I want, right? You remember, four limbs, right? He lost. I said, wherever you want. And he goes, Frank, wherever I want. I said, Brendan, wherever you want. He goes, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm sure, wherever you want. He goes, even Hawaii? I said, I see. I said, he was kidding around, and I love that already. Here he is, several months after 20 maybe operations that he had already, and he had this a sense of humor. He was an outrageous human being himself. That being said, that's what changed us. That is what changed us. That meeting changed the whole foundation. Before that, we were doing good things. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But we didn't have to raise a lot of money. We're doing some small scholarships for kids that lost a parent, most certainly first responders, certainly in the schools where my brother went, where our family went. We helped those children out. But now I got to raise $750,000 to build a home, for Brenda Morocco. And we did it like this. We did it. Now, I'm not going to say it was easy, but we did it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And we had so many people that came together.
Well, and now you've got the Smart Home program. You have the Fallen First Responder and Gold Star Family Home programs, which offers these mortgage-free homes to all of those people. I mean, it is an incredible legacy that Stephen's loss and sacrifice has spawned. I mean, even he, as outrageous as he is, he couldn't have envisioned this, Frank.
No, it would never have happened if he didn't make that run. If he didn't run through that tunnel, there was no other foundation like this in America. There still isn't, other than us. Yeah. And it's very needed. Think of all the first responders that give their life every year, right? Every year. It's incredible. And December 20th, 2014, the detectives Lou and Ramos are assassinated just because they're police officers sitting in their car in Brooklyn. Some crazy person came up from Baltimore and thought it'd be okay to assassinate police officers. And they did. And I remember meeting with those families on Christmas Eve, 2014, and I told them the Tunnel to Towers Foundation are going to pay off their mortgages. So now we're doing the smart homes where we said, now we're going to build a smart home for everybody who's catastrophically injured. Now we start paying off those 2 mortgages because it was right here in New York. And then I heard about 5 police officers that were killed in Dallas, and then one in Ohio, in Iowa. And I mean, and all of a sudden, I was talking to my family. I said, we got to do this if we're helping these police officers, we got to do it for everyone. And then we took a solemn vow that we're going to help every first responder in America that dies in the line of duty, that leaves a young family behind. We're going to give them a mortgage-free home. I spoke with one today. I spoke to a widow today that just lost her husband serving a warrant, and he got jumped and killed. He was ambushed himself. So, look, it's so important, the work that we're doing, but we only do it because, like your listeners, your viewers, we ask everybody, go to t2t.org, donate $11 a month. I've said that. I've said it
for years,
thousands of times, and most certainly on Fox and on and other broadcasts and stuff. And it works. They say the fire department says many hands makes light work, and we bring many people together to make this happen. Yes, we have the big companies. The big companies. We have GM, we have Home Depot, American Express, T-Mobile, and many, many more. That gives us millions and millions of dollars, but we count on the $11 a month to make this happen.
It's an amazing. I got to say, I didn't appreciate the diversity of the work until I dove in this past week, Frank. I mean, and I knew you. Look, I've been to your events. I think it's incredible. And the golfing. I was just at a golf outing with you in New Jersey, and now realizing that Stephen was meant to play golf with you all that day. It kind of drove home why the golf thing was so important. I couldn't figure out what the connection was. I mean, people like to golf. I don't, but others do. And it made it mean more, I think, when I realized the connection.
We try to do everything with a purpose. Everything we do at the foundation has some underlining purpose to it because it has to be real. What we're doing has to be real. I mean, the biggest purpose is who we're helping. But yeah, we were going to play golf that day, that beautiful day.
Wow.
And, and I said to my brother the day before, see you tomorrow, bro. I love you. You know what I mean? And we gave our man hug. That never happened. But because of it, just look at all the good that has come out of my brother's sacrifice. Yes, I'd rather him be around. I wish I was helping another foundation for the same type of cause, no question about it. I wish his 5 kids had their dad. One of them's getting married on Memorial Weekend on that
Wow.
on that Saturday night is getting married. Another one just got engaged. All these kids, they were babies. They were 3.5, 5 years old. When it happened. The oldest was 10. He had a 2.5-year-old and a 9-month-old.
Wow.
And a 9-month-old. And they're all doing unbelievable. He'd be very proud of them.
Incredible. Well, I mean, I didn't realize you had a foundling facility in Staten Island. I mean, this was mind-blowing. And now you're helping homeless veterans. This program is incredible. Where did that come from? I mean, you've housed thousands of veterans across the country now, Frank.
Yeah. So it came from a simple point that, when something's looking at you straight in the face and there's a problem with our veterans, they go serve us, right? And you're seeing them. When I was doing my walk, remember the small walk I did?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I walked from the Pentagon to Shanksville, Pennsylvania to Ground Zero, right? When I was walking through Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I went under an overpass. And under that overpass, there were so many homelessness people sitting under there in such a dirty, unbelievable conditions. And I spoke to some of them, and they were veterans. And that thought has never gotten out of my mind. I travel all over the United States. I see it all over. Finally, we spoke about it as a foundation. I'm going to tell you, we almost didn't do it because the undertaking is so tremendous, so large, so it seemed almost insurmountable. And then we said, we just can't put a roof over their head. You got to get them all the services they need.
Yeah, they need a community too.
They need to be, and they can't be in shelters.
Yeah.
They can't be in shelters. They have to have their own, their own place to live, their own apartment, their own, we're buying these hotels. It's just 19 of them all over the United States, right? And we're renovating them into apartments, permanent and temporary. But, for the older guys, it's permanent. For the younger ones, I want it to be temporary. I want them back out there and getting their own homes and whatever it may be. But we almost didn't do it because it was the undertaking was so huge. So big.
You mean in terms of the numbers? The numbers.
In terms of the amount of money.
Yeah.
And terms of making sure they get the mental health side right. You say, how are we going to do that? How are we going to put this all together? We did it. We put together a plan, and finally I said, I won't say the words it. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah. Stephen would want us to do it. Mom and Dad would want us to do it. Because they were Franciscans, they want to take care of the poor and the needy, right? Yep. I said, they would want us to do it. We have to do it. We have no choice. We're doing it, and we're doing it. 10,000 homeless vets off the street just the last 2 years.
Incredible.
10,000. 10,000. We have a
And Frank, I know you're involved in something that I covered, and at a time when nobody was covering it. On Fox, we showed people, those homeless veterans camped out on the streets surrounding the LA VA campus in Brentwood. This is land that was deeded to the government to care for veterans. Tell me what happened recently and how it involves Tunnel to Towers. You all are part of the solution there.
Yeah, we're definitely part of the solution. And President Trump just signed an executive order saying that he's going to open up to house 6,000 homeless veterans on that property. And he wants to, his words, while he was running for president, I loved it when I heard him say it, He wants to eradicate homelessness. Well, I've been saying it for a couple of years. And he's been running for president for the last couple of years. He's saying the same thing. Here's the thing. That property is so important because we know there's at least 3,000 homeless vets right on that property. We already house some of those homeless veterans in our own property there. All right. We poured in a lot of money. I think it was $72 million we poured into that project ourselves.
Wow.
But it's painstakingly slow. It's not the way I like to operate, to be honest with you. You're working on a big government property. You need so many OKs here and there. I'm not in charge of that particular project. I wish in some ways I wish I was, but some cases I'd rather just stay totally independent in what we're doing. But I know now with the president saying that he's going to do this, he signs this executive order. My goodness, we already met with the Secretary of HUD and the Secretary of the VA about working with them to make sure, because the VA, Doug Collins, this guy gets it. I mean, he's just all in, and Turner. Scott Turner is incredible. We can't get it done without the vouchers from the HUD vouchers. I can tell you that, because we work with over 1,000 other non-for-profits around the country. When they see a homeless veteran, they could call us up and we could get that homeless veteran off the street immediately. But we need the HUD vouchers to do that. We could get them off the street, but we need the vouchers afterwards to keep them off the street.
Right, to keep maintaining it. There's a lot of services they need.
And we could get them all that services because we have case managers for every one of these people. We don't, once again, we just don't put them somewhere and say goodbye. No, it doesn't work that way.
Frank, how does your personal faith animate this effort? I mean, I know you still go to Blessed Sacrament on Staten Island, your boyhood parish. This, I know, has to be an animating power as you grow and continue to sustain Tunnel to Towers.
Well, I know what we're doing is the right thing. Therefore, I know it's blessed. I know that the man upstairs is opening doors for us that we never knew, or that we couldn't open myself. Even go back to the story of Bob Adamanko. I told you, it's just getting the permits to go through that tunnel. He keeps on sending us people. There's no doubt about it. He just keeps on sending us people, companies, people, $11 a month people, all these things. It's nothing that, yes, we're bringing people together. Am I working hard? Sure, I'm working hard. But everyone, most people work hard. They have to do it. But I have the great fortune of working with these great families on a constant basis. And once you meet these families, once again, you have no choice but continue doing what we're doing. So faith has everything to do with it. I talk to my kids about faith all the time. It's what carries you through forget about the good times. The good times you feel upbeat anyway, right? Yeah. But you thank God for it. There's no question about it. But, it's through difficult times that you need your faith the most. And we needed it around 9/11, and he put us on this path, and it's a path we're never going to get off.
Do you worry that young people have forgotten about 9/11, Frank?
Well, of course, but we do have at 9/11 Institute.
Yeah, I know you do.
We have K through 12. We have educational. You could go right there, go t2t.org, go to our 9/11 Institute. You can download right for yourself. As a parent, you could download it. As a school, you could download it. As a community, you can download it and teach it as it's a curriculum that we put a lot of time and effort into because we want to make sure that we honor the sacrifice and never forget. And we're going to stick with that. That was our first thing that we were doing, and we're never going to leave that.
Well, Frank, when I look at the story of the Sillers, and when I look at Stephen's story and what you've done, it really is about sacrificial concern, starting with Stephen and now spreading to the entire family, and now this movement of sacrificial concern. What would you say to Americans as Memorial Day comes around again? What is their duty? What is their role?
I think that duty is very simple, that if we're asking people to put on a uniform and protect us, that we must make a promise and a vow to them. And this is very simple, that if you go serve our community or our country and you give your life for either one, and you give your kids a kiss goodbye and you don't come home, we are Americans. We are going to take care of your family. We're going to make sure that they have a mortgage-free home, or if they come back catastrophically injured, that they have a mortgage-free smart home. Or God forbid they come back and they're mentally disturbed and they can't get back into the swing of life, that we're going to take that, we're going to hug them, we're going to love them, we're going to put them into place, and we're going to get them the help to get them back so they can be part of the family again. That is our promise, and we ask everybody on this Memorial Day to take that promise with us, because that's how we get it done.
Yeah, I also think, Frank, it's so important. We used to do this with our children, particularly when they were young. Go to these memorials for veterans, whether it's a Vietnam memorial or a World War II memorial. Every local community has them. Take the time to take your children there and honor the sacrifice of those who gave their lives. It inculcates, I think, a feeling, a reverence for the patriotism and the sacrifice of these men and women, and teaches the next generation this is whose shoulders you stand on and whose sacrifice you stand on.
I agree. Or sit with your children and watch a movie. Watch some of these movies about the great sacrifice. And so they're depicted in a certain way. Are they a little upsetting? Yeah, so what? Sometimes some people are saying to me, oh, you should take off your website the two towers coming down. I said, bull crap, excuse the French. This is what happened.
Right.
This is what happened. You have to show what happened. You got to be, show what happened and show what you can do afterwards to try to make things better. You can't stay in a bad place. It's just, we have a choice, and you can't stay there. And the choice is go out and help somebody. Get out of yourself. Go help somebody else. And you can't bring back your loved one, but you could do something to honor them in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, well, I love that you've done that in so many beautiful ways, incredible ways, and it continues to grow and expand. I can't tell you the people I come across who've either been helped by you or know someone who's been helped by you, which is an incredible legacy for an organization that's only been around since 2001. Frank, for every guest on the show, I do an Arroyo Grande questionnaire. These are fast questions. There'll be no penalty at the end. I'm going to ask you these very quickly.
I think so fast anymore, but go ahead.
Who's the person you most admire?
My mother and father, two of them.
Who's the person you most despise?
Osama bin Laden.
What is the best feature that you have and the worst?
My best feature is my faith, and the worst is I get very angry when I see bad things happen.
I share that with you. What do you fear, Frank?
I fear I feel better today than I ever did, but I fear that America is moving away from what has made us great, which is sacrificing and our faith, and that we are, a Judeo-Christian country and born from that, and that we have to have that understanding to stay in the greatness that we have. So that is my biggest concern. But I do feel better now. I'll be honest with you. I do feel that people are coming back to faith. I see it all the time. The people I deal with all the time. I'm around it all the time. The people that we just did a groundbreaking in Bayville, New Jersey, where 2,000 people came out to see us break ground on a piece of property that we're going to be doing for homeless vets. 2,000 people.
Wow.
Yes, so I see that, and if you were there, you could feel the amount of energy and love and concern and commitment people have. So, I do feel good about America. I feel so good about America. I feel like we're heading in a really good direction, but we got to be careful because we can't forget, how we got here, and we got to have our faith. Faith is
I love that Tunnel to Towers is really a vehicle for so many people to express not only their belief to reverence the sacrifice of all these people. It's a beautiful way to do that. What's the greatest virtue, Frank?
Love.
What is your greatest regret?
Regrets, I've had a few, but too few to mention. Look, we all make mistakes growing up, on things, but I'm married for 47 years. I have 3 beautiful children, 7 grandchildren. I'm sorry my brother's gone. It kills me. I think about him every single day. But I can't change that. I don't have many. We all have small regrets.
Yeah.
There's no question about it, but I'd have nerve to complain.
I love that. What do you know that other people don't know, Frank Siller?
Well, I don't know about that because I'm not that smart. I built the first smart home. I want to say I built a smart home not because I'm smart, because I got somebody smart to do it. You know, I realize I surround myself with just good people and talented people, and that's how we get it done. I consider myself like Tom Sawyer a little bit. I get a lot of people to paint the fence for me, and they come back and say, "Look what Frank Siller did." No, it's all these people painting the fence that are doing it. I'm just a spokesperson for them.
That's so great. The best piece of advice you ever received is what, Frank?
I The best piece of advice that I ever. I tell you, there's something I live by, and when I'm angry, I do wait a day or two before I confront something. My father, who was not a very patient person, always said take a step back, before you open your mouth, because when you open your mouth, well, if you're too loaded, you could sprue terrible things. I mean, I'm not even say I live that way every day, but I try to. I try to, and it always seems like if you wait 24 hours on something, it's not as bad as it was 24 hours beforehand.
In the moment, yeah. That's great advice, actually. And particularly for hotheads like me, it's perfect.
On me.
Yeah. What's your favorite book, Frank? And the last one you read that you really enjoyed?
So I continuously read a book about St. Francis of Assisi. I keep on reading more and more books about St. Francis of Assisi. Being that my parents, live that life. I read daily prayers every single day. I love reading the Bible. I'm not Bible versed. I can't repeat the Bible and stuff, but I do like reading scripture for sure. I put in a lot of the things when I give a talk. I'm gonna call a speech a talk. I usually put scripture in it because I relate it to how I'm supposed to do things. So I'm a big reader, but I read more inspirational books and stories all the time. But it all relates around faith.
What happens when this is over, Frank?
Well, first of all, this is never going to be over. The foundation. That's a promise. That we're building it to last forever. I got young Stephen Jr. working here.
Wow.
I got other family members involved because this is a family foundation. Yet we have, hundreds and hundreds of employees too, because we do build houses all over. We do with the homeless veterans. We have case managers that have to work with these great heroes. So this foundation will never be over. I'll expire like we all do, right? I count on it all the time. I tell my kids I could be gone tomorrow. You just got to be ready. Because we do not know the day nor the hour, right? As it says. So I'm not worried about the foundation because the work we're doing is always going to be necessary because there's always going to be heroes dying for us.
Wow. Well, Frank Siller, what a legacy that you're passing on, not only to your family, but to all of us, and making us all a part of. I thank you for being here and for your outstanding work. And God rest the soul of your dear brother, Stephen, and all those who offered the ultimate sacrifice for us, particularly as Memorial Day draws closer. Thank you,
Bless
Frank.
America. Thank you, Raymond.
Here's the whole, there's something that Frank Siller said there. I picked up on it when I first heard it. I even mentioned it to him, where his brother Stephen said, I will catch up with you later. And so many of these heroes, we end up trying to catch up to. We should be catching up to them, trying to follow at least their example of selfless sacrifice, where they were more concerned about others than they were even about themselves. That's an incredible lesson. And the underpinning of faith that animates the entire Tunnel to Towers Foundation, which is something I didn't know before I started doing research on this interview, and I've known Frank Siller for a long time. You can support Tunnel to Towers by visiting them at T2T.org. I hope you'll come back to Arroyo Grande soon. Why live a dry, constricted life when if you fill it with good things, it can flow into a broad, thriving Arroyo Grande? Make sure you subscribe and like this episode. Thanks for diving in. We'll see you next time. Arroyo Grande is produced in partnership with iHeart Podcasts and is available on the iHeart Radio app or wherever you get your podcasts.